welcome to PTI. I'm Joshua MacArthur with Jason Siegel and Houston Chabot. And some of the topics today will be baseball and some basketball. So, guys, what do you think of steroid users being in the Hall of Fame? Or should steroid users be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I really think that steroid users shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because when you think about it, anybody who wants to play the game of baseball, I mean, you have this dream as a kid that, you want to someday, make it to the big leagues and, get your name in the spotlight. I think a lot of people, for example, like Barry Bonds, I mean, he's just a stereotypical example. I mean, he just is a great home run hitter, but then you begin to realize, how he got this massive number of home runs. And then once you hear that, he's on some kind of a performance-enhancing drug, I mean, it's really disappointing if you're somebody who idolizes, this kind of a player, just from watching TV. So, I mean, I just think that it's, an embarrassment to Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an embarrassment. Like every time, I love baseball. I'm a big fan of it. But every time somebody starts to get hot, especially a hitter starts hitting a lot of home runs, my first thought is he on steroids? And it just shouldn't be that way from a fan's perspective. And I think there are two parts to the Hall of Fame. There's the museum, and I think some of these guys should be in the museum. I mean, Pete Rose is in the museum, and I think that's important because we can't forget about the steroid era. It is an important part of baseball's history, but I don't think they should be in the Hall of Fame part. I think it should be Major League Baseball. They should protect the integrity of the game, and they need to do that by not allowing these cheaters to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
All right. Next question will be: how many years do you think it should take for a college basketball player to get in the NBA?
I think it should be 2 years. We've seen a lot. We know. First it was 0 years. As soon as you graduate high school, be an NBA player, and then now it's 1 year. But I just think that's not enough time for players to really make adjustments. Because just because somebody is good in high school doesn't mean they're going to be good in the NBA for whatever reason. Because maybe the rules are a little different. Maybe in terms of shot clock. I think there are just a lot of adjustments that these players need to make, and they can't make them quickly enough. And I think the NCAA should make more of an effort to try to get these kids to actually be in the classroom, actually get work done. And I think when there's only 1 year, it's really hard to enforce that. But if they had at least 2 years, then it'll be easier. I understand for some of these players, that's the only way that they can make money and can support their families, and that's a very important part of it. But I think players should have to be at least 2 years removed before going to the NBA.
I mean, I'll agree with you there. I mean, I think that, you have to recognize that there are some talented people that, when they're, receiving their high school diplomas, that they might be that phenomenal All-American status. But you kind of have to realize that when you talk about, people who are big into watching, any NBA basketball game and you hear these, new names that come up, I think you have to realize that when you're, only 18 or 19 years old, yes, you've matured and you've been working your butt off to reach, the professional status, but I think you have to really consider that, education, just from my own beliefs, I mean, I think it's important that, you try to learn as much as you can, but even though you might be a stellar athlete, I think you have to just still consider that, your academics comes first and then your athletics, but anyone can debate it.
All right. On our last topic, do you guys think that tanking should be allowed in the NBA draft?
Well, I mean, I understand that, not every professional basketball team is going to be, off the charts in their division with, a high over 500 win-loss record, but part of me thinks that if you do lose, there should be a reason why you lost. So part of me might say, I might disagree with it a little, but then I might agree with it. So I'm kind of 50-50 with it, but I'll say that if you really do lose, there should be a reason. And if you've got a bad losing streak, well, it might not be intentional, it may be intentional. So, I mean, part of me is like, if you're really in bad shape, then figure out what the organization can do. I don't know.
Well, I think for the fans, that's just terrible that the team tanking. Be very frustrated, and I think the game should be geared towards the fans. The main problem is there's not much that the NBA can really do about it. You know, they tried the draft lottery, but that hasn't really worked. We've seen the Sixers tank for 2 years in a row now. We saw the Bucks do it a couple of years ago. So I think the only way would be maybe to find a way to try to make it easier for teams to rebuild, and perhaps a way not necessarily through the draft, especially for some of these smaller market teams, like for example maybe Utah, smaller market teams. So whether that's something through free agency or something else. So I mean, I think tanking is just it's really cheap and it makes the game a lot less interesting. But the problem is, basketball is the one sport where if you have a star player, that can completely turn around your franchise. So I think tanking is really bad and should be removed from the game. And I think really the only thing the NBA could do is trial and error and just try to experiment with different things, whether it's the trade deadline or free agency or the draft, to try to combat tanking.
Alright, and
Alright, well, this has been PTI, and thank you for watching.